Let me know if you're able, if you could see that fully. Let me see if I can make it bigger. All right. Could you see it okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Good evening, everyone. I am excited to share with you about the joys of science and research. So as you probably have already guessed, I work in this space. I am a scientist. And so I'm going to share with you just one aspect. Raul talked about getting ready for college and have an idea of what you want to be. So I'm going to take you on a little journey to give you just a snapshot of what I experienced, and I'm going to share some tips with you. So the theme for this afternoon segment, as Yonette mentioned, is strengthening our bonds. And so I'm going to focus on that from the lens of science and research. So I'm going to share a few goals, and then I'm going to talk about the joy of it all. What is the big thing with science and research? And I'm going to tell you briefly about the path that I took. And then I'm going to end with 3 key ingredients to success. And this applies not only to the science realm, but to any research field that you may be, or field that you may be interested in. So let's get started. So goals. These are the 3 goals that I hope that everyone on this call will take away by the time I get to the end of this presentation. I'm here to inspire you, to inspire others to make an impact, make a difference in whatever field, whether it's science or another field. How can you make a difference? How can you make an impact? Empower. I want to empower you to forge ahead in the purpose that God has for your life. And we heard about that this morning. Guest speaker. Could you hear me? Could you hear me on that?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, great. I thought I had dropped off there. Okay, so secondly, I want to empower everyone to forge ahead in the purpose that God has outlined for your life. And He has a specific purpose for each and every one of us. And thirdly, to share a few best practices and strategies that I've used on that have helped me in my career. So these are the 3 goals that I hope that you would take back with you by the time I get to the end of this presentation. So the joy of it all, science. Your first question may be, well, how did you know you wanted to work in the field of science? How would I know what God has for me? And one example that I have is I call it the why question. Growing up, I have a twin brother, an older sister, and a younger brother. So it's 4 of us total. And growing up, I was the child that always had the why. Why? And so my dad, who's deceased now, 25 years this October, Pastor Royce A.W. Mentor, he would always tell me, go look it up, go pull a dictionary, encyclopedia. He was determined not to always, just give me the answer, because then how will I ever learn? So I was the why child, and I always wanted to know how things worked. I was fascinated with the Bible and the stories, but also with the human body. And so that started at a young age, I would say in middle school. Secondly, how do you know? And the guest speaker today talked about having joy and passion, things that we do in life. You should be, if it's something that's really, that God will have you to be, you're going to feel passionate about doing it. You're going to have joy. Now, joy doesn't mean that things are always going to work out the way that you want them to, but it's when you look at the grand scheme of things, it does still equate to joy. I mean, I'm going to get to that later on in the talk. So different things that you may experience in life, whether it's training someone on how to fix a car, training someone on how to be a good doctor or nurse or engineer or teacher. If you feel, and sometimes you'll feel it in your body that, oh, this is so much fun, it's great, helping this person, make note of that as you go through life. And as you go from, let's say, high school to college, just make note of the different things that you are participating in And you'll know after you try out a few things, like this third bullet, this third arrow here talks about internships. If you think you're interested in the field of science, get an internship. Working in a hospital for a summer. I did that. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And so one summer I was a volunteer in the emergency room in July. And so that was quite the experience. You know, a lot of different things that I saw with firecracker injuries, lawnmowers, but go in that space where you think you want to work in that field and start to learn, you know, okay, this is what it may be like. Summer programs, whether you're in high school or in college, you want to be, you know, participating in this during that summertime, and that's going to start to give you a sense of where your path is headed. Secondly, what are the benefits of working in the field of science, in the field of research? And I've listed 4 things here. One is impactful. You're doing impactful work that will benefit others, improving the health of the nation, of the public health space. And the current field that I'm working in, I'm able to manage review panels similar to the National Institutes of Health, applications for funding to conduct research that's going to benefit patients and caregivers. So it has a really high impact to benefit people, to help them know, how am I going to make this healthcare decision on what care I should get? And so whatever field that you're in, it should be something that where you're making an impact in the world, in society. Secondly, when you work in the science and research space, I put this quote here: to boldly go. And some of you probably know what the rest of this says: to boldly go where no man has gone before. And this is from Star Trek, one of the famous TV shows. And when you're working in science and research, you really are boldly going. You're doing research. You're trying to find an answer. You're doing these experiments in the lab. And so many times you're trailblazing. Sometimes you are working on, you know, evidence that has been published in scientific journals, but many times you're really going down that path. You're blazing the trail yourself. So that type of field, you have to be ready for that. This third arrow talks about ever changing, ever learning. The field of research, it always changes, moves really fast. The previous presenter talked about AI technology and other fields where it's constantly changing. So you're always constantly learning, and you have an opportunity to train others. If you like teaching others how to excel, which is one of the things that I really enjoy doing, in this space, you will have a lot of opportunity to train others. And then you want to, they in turn will train the next set that comes through. So this is one of the benefits of working in the field of science and research. So my path versus reality. And this applies not only to the field of science, but I would say in life in general. So when I was in high school, my plan was, okay, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to become a neurosurgeon, you know, work with Ben Carson, you know. So, and I thought the path was going to be just straight. You know, you get on the bike, you keep going, straight path, there's the flag, you're done. Reality sets in quite quickly, and you realize your path, most people's path that are in this call now, it's in that reality. So you're riding the bike, oh, there's a big drop that's coming, you don't see it coming. And so I have an example here: college, graduate school, and career. So for example, I was actually headed to the University of Michigan, and the Lord redirected me, and then I went to Oakwood University. That's where he wanted me to go. And that's where I ended up meeting my husband. Someone talked about spouse, you meet your spouse in college. So the Lord directed me there, and I could talk about it offline, but I want to stay within the time limit. But God will redirect you when it comes to college, grad school. After I graduated, it was med school or grad school. And not till after I graduated did the Lord say, grad school is a clear choice for you. And so I went to University of Alabama in Birmingham and studied pharmacology in a toxicology program. And so I would never have picked that beforehand. So you have the path is not straight, And now I am working not in the field of neuroscience, but I'm working as a scientist. I've done research in prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, and worked at NIH. So God has opened up different doors. And now I'm working in more of the grants administration field. So still get to interact with the top scientists and recruit them for these review panels. But if you would have told me that in high school, I would say, no, I'm not going to do research working in the lab. I'm going to be in med school. And so now looking back, one of the things I've listed here, Jeremiah 29:11. And it says, God says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So if you were to look at this graph, you'll say, oh, there's a lot of harm in that reality section there, but God knows what he's doing. So don't be closed-minded when your plan isn't that straight shot. The Bible also talks about how God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than ours. So be very open to where God is leading you, and keep in mind his word that says that all things work together for good. So he didn't say this one specific part, but when you put it all together, that big picture that only he sees at this present time, it's going to work together for good. So this has encouraged me throughout when I've come through those different dips. I said, okay, God said, I know the plan that I have for you. You said all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. And so keep that in mind when you have these bumps. You see there's a storm in the reality there, and then there's a dip. Now you have to climb a ladder. And that's the reality of the career path that I'm sure many of you have taken. But just be open, trust God. I'm going to end with these 3 key ingredients for success that have really helped me. First of all, keep God first. This is extremely critical, especially when you are after Oakland. I went to University of Alabama, and so some studying was done by some of my other colleagues on Friday night, and you just have to put God first, trust his word, know that he will give you what you need to pass that test with flying colors. You don't need to study Friday night. You don't need to study Sabbath. Wait till after sunset. So keep God first. Start the day with him. And that way you're going to develop a closer relationship. You'll be able to recognize his voice more when different challenges come up. And some days when you drop off, pick yourself back up. There will be those days where you're just like, I got to go to class and I got to go. I don't have time. But try, pick yourself back up. Try to do better the next day. Keep God first. And when you do that, he's going to direct you in the right path. Secondly, train. It's very critical. God doesn't want us to just sit back and say, okay, Lord, what are you going to give me? God wants us to do our part, which means read what you need to do. Take those internships, be part of those summer programs. Talk to people who are in the field that you're interested in, and they'll give you the inside scoop. They'll tell you where their failures were and how they learned from them. So you want to exercise those faith muscles. That means, you're showing God that you have faith in him by movement. You're moving in the direction that he's telling you to do. And so training, and sometimes, this is one area I need to work on as well. Just keep training and build those faith muscles. Lastly, go beyond, get outside the box. This is the box of your comfort zone. And when God is stretching us, you're like, no. I've never done that before. I can't do that. How do I do that? And so we try to, say, I'm good in the box. I'm good. I'm fine. But God has that blessing right outside the box. It could be further out, but we have to be open-minded with each challenge that comes your way, especially when it's outside your comfort zone. God is doing some things and everything lines up. The older you get, when you look back, you're like, oh, that's why I went through that. So know that you can do it. The Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ, not some things, most things. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So know that God will equip you. There will be moments where you're drained, mentally drained, especially in the pandemic. It seems like there's more work than before the pandemic. I'm still working remote with my job that's in DC, but the work has just piled up. So just know that, keep in tune with God. Know that whatever challenges come your way, He will equip you. And just know that He will give you strength. And so these are the 3 tips that have really helped me these 40 plus years, throughout life, from high school to college to grad school, and now working in this science and research field. So those are the tips that I have to share. And I'm happy to address any questions, but if I know we're on a time schedule, Yonette, so I will turn things back over to you. Thank you.
Yes,
so much.
thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Roislyn, for pouring so much into us. This is information that you're getting that you'd have to pay significant amount of monies for. So thank you. Let's take heed. Now let's see if we can get back to our sweet joy. Let's see if we can get back to sweet joy and lighten the moment, lighten the evening a little bit. Share my screen and see if we can create a dessert with sweet joy. There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joy Babick. I am a mother, wife, homemaker, and owner of Sweet Joy Cooks. I am happy to be able to spend some time with you today. Thank you so much for the invite. I specialize in sweet and savory plant-based treat that is not only tasty, but healthy and nutritious for your body. I currently supply a chain of London-based restaurants where I do lots of plant-based goodies for them. I also do various events and special occasions as well. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you'll enjoy the simple plant-based treat that I have in store for you today, and I hope you will try it in your own time. Thank you so much once again, and I look forward to seeing you just now in the kitchen. May God truly bless you. Hi, so welcome to Sweet Joy's Kitchen. I am going to be making for you a Chia Carob pudding. So it's like a chocolate pudding, but obviously it is going to be diabetic friendly. Now, the superfood that I'm using today, well, I'm using 2. I'm using chia seed and I'm using also carob. And this is a replacement of chocolate. Carob contains virtually no fat at all. It's high in fiber and it's a good source of antioxidants that obviously help to protect your cells. And also it has absolutely no caffeine, and we all know that caffeine is really not good for our bodies. Now, the chia is a superfood, and it helps to stabilize your blood sugar levels, and it's rich in fiber, high in omega-3, which helps to lower cholesterol in the blood that can cause heart disease and stroke. And it also promotes good bowel movement. So we see that these are 2 powerful superfoods that we're going to be using today. Now, what we need for this recipe is 6 tablespoons of your chia seeds. We need 2 tablespoons of your carob powder. We need a teaspoon each of your orange extract and your vanilla extract. We need half a cup of coconut cream or coconut milk, and we need a full cup of almond milk, and these are all homemade. So these are all fresh ingredients, but obviously you can use the alternative plant-based milk. This can also, be used with cashew or hazelnut, whatever milk of your choice you could use for this ingredient. Now, this is the first part of the dish. So first we're going to start with making the base of your pudding, which obviously is the liquid. So first we're going to add the coconut cream. And then we're going to add your plant-based milk, which is the almond milk. Then, sorry, I forgot the salt. It's half a teaspoon of salt, a full teaspoon of vanilla extract, also the orange extract, Carob is really good with orange. That really nice. If you don't really like the taste of orange, you can leave this out of the recipe. And what we're going to do is to combine this. I use a whisk because I just find that it mixes, mixes well. But you could use a spoon, but I just find that the whisk incorporates the ingredients better, especially when it comes to the carob, quite lumpy. Then we're going to add the carob. We're going to just mix until it's combined thoroughly before adding the chia. You should smell this right now. It's really smelling lovely. We in our family, we love carob. Really, really delicious. Okay, so when this is combined, we're going to then add our chia, the chia seeds. We're going to add these seeds, and because they gel quickly, we want to try to get it incorporated in the mixture, because we're going to leave this chia seed to set. What I normally do when I'm making this pudding for dessert, I normally leave it overnight, but anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. I find that overnight you get the best results, because this will thicken. And then what we're going to do when we're finished combining our ingredients, I'm just going to cover with some cling film. And then I'm going to set it in the fridge for it to soak up all of that goodness. Okay, so we're going to place this in the fridge. You see me here adding the honey because I forgot to incorporate the honey. So you will need just a tablespoon of honey, because your almond milk and the coconut milk is giving you a hint of sweetness anyway. But I use pure honey to add to this mixture. And then we're going to cover and then set in your fridge. Okay, so as you can see, I've taken my chia pudding from out of the fridge, and if you see, it's very thick now. Yeah, it's absorbed all that lovely, delicious liquid. So now it's looking really nice and chocolatey, like about a milk chocolatey kind of look. Really looking really lovely. I've chosen today to use a selection of berries because the nutrients in berries help to prevent cholesterol from damaging artery walls. They're high in antioxidants, they're rich in fiber, and it's good for the gut, and also very rich in vitamin C. Pineapple, I chose to use the pineapple today because it's also rich in vitamin C, and also it has something called bromelain, which is a powerful anti-inflammatory used to treat bowel and joint problems such as, arthritis and so on. So I have a specific reason for using all these ingredients. And also, with diabetics, it's very, very good for us to be having a lot of, berries and so on in our diet. So especially for those suffering from diabetes, it's very, very good. They're slow releasing fruit, and they're very, very good to maintain a good blood sugar. So without further ado, we're going to start making up our chia pudding. Oh my days, you should smell this. Really, really lovely. So this is the consistency of the pudding. If you notice, yeah, very nice and thick. Yeah, so we're gonna begin. And what I normally do is I put, firstly, some chocolate at the bottom. Well, chocolate pudding. And then you just really layer as you like, but I like, as a lasagna, like if you were making up a lasagna, you just layer as you like with fruit. Layer as you like with fruit. And I've used strawberry, blueberries, kiwis, and I'm going to show you a special mix to provide some crunch, some texture. So that is mine so far. And you're going to add some more of the pudding mixture. And real simple, nothing technical at all. You want something really delicious to have that takes literally no effort at all. And then we're going to top with this mixture here. And this is a mixture of just coconut, shredded coconut with sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, your chia seeds, and also some linseed toasted. And we're just going to top that off. Yeah, with some crunch. And that's all to your dessert. Really yummy dessert.
All right. Isn't that fantastic? So as a diabetic, you don't have to go without desserts. Here you had a terrific dessert that you can add. It's healthy, it's plant-based, and it's good for you. So let's move on to our next presenter. Dr. Grace, can you go ahead and share with us in the context of diabetes and in the context of just life, there are certain documents that each of us should have to ensure that our family members are taken care of and we are taken care of as we traverse this land. It's Dr. Grace. There she is. Dr. Grace, you're up. And I think while she's getting ready, Dr. Brathwaite just joined us. We're going to hear from him next. So Dr. Brathwaite, get ready to present in a few. I want to encourage you to give to GuyMetro. This afternoon's program was planned in place of our concert so that we can have the opportunity to donate based on our power class and the things that we learn from being here. GuyMetro can only exist if you help us achieve our mission. So we encourage you to donate through our Cash App and our PayPal programs so that we can move the mission forward.
Good evening, everyone. That pudding looked really delicious, and I'm definitely going to be trying it. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak this evening to you on a very important topic. I have been following GuyMetro for a number of years, first by invitation from Terrence. We know that Terrence is a person of inclusion. He's always trying to show you a reason why you need to be involved with GuyMetro. And I have been a follower for a long time. And now, especially that my sister is leading this group, we are so proud of her and of the work that she is doing and that GuyMetro is doing to help continue the support of the people of Guyana and Guyanese here in the US and around the country, around the world. So my topic may seem a little bit off from what we've been talking about, but it is not off at all. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have lost a relative or a friend, or maybe even a neighbor to COVID? Maybe you can, in the chat, just indicate if you have, or just by raising your hand, let us see if you are such a person. Because I have talked, and I see your hands, I have talked with many who have lost, without being prepared, suddenly lost the loved ones, who, because they were not planning for such sudden deaths, were not able to leave in place any guardrails to protect their family. And so today, what we want to talk about will be some of the guardrails that we should have in place. And maybe for some of us, this is not an issue. Some people may already have taken steps to protect their families. But for those who have not, I have been sharing this information. I've shared it before, and I will continue sharing it because, especially for our group, people of color, you know, there's this old belief somewhere, this old wise tale, that if you prepare for death, you're going to die. And so we try to put death, the thoughts about dying, as far away as possible. But someone reminded me that as sure as life is, so is death. We came from wherever we came from in this world. We've been given wisdom and intelligence to live life successfully. And a part of that living requires preparation for departure from this life to our eventual rest until our Father calls us home. And so, as Proverbs 15:22 reminds us, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, plans will succeed. And so I want to share some ways that you can make some plans for successful living for your families after you have departed this life. And so I'll share with you 10 documents you need now. And so the first one I want to talk about is the original will. And maybe you wouldn't want to raise your hand, but I want you to think about it. How many of you have prepared a will? And if you have not yet, what are you waiting for? The will gives you the ability or the discretion to choose a few things. One is how your assets will be distributed. Two, who will be the guardians of any minor children you may leave behind. And three, who will be the executor of your assets? Who will assist with the distribution of assets? We hear it all the time. When there's no will, there's loss of control. Not only do we hear it, we all know of cases where people have passed on and have not left a will, and we see the confusion and the distress that it brings upon families. I was talking with a relative just recently who lost her mom, and she was saying that she thought that she and her brother were really close, but her mom died without a will, and there's been so much chaos between herself and her brother now that they're in court, and they're not even in court about the will, they're in court about fraud and a lot of other things that have come up on account of there not being a will, not of the mom not sharing or not leaving a document that declares how she would like her assets to be distributed. So we need to have that will. And I want to let you know that it's not as complicated. It does not have to be as complicated as it may seem. A will can be a simple document in which you are saying, you know, I have A, B, C, D, and this is how I want A, B, C, D to be distributed. And if you are leaving, if there's a spouse, then you can have the spouse be the executor. You can have the spouse determine further division. So you can leave everything there for the spouse to make the decision. So it really does not have to be complicated, but it is necessary. It will save so many problems so that your relatives will be able to peacefully lay you to rest instead of being so worried and perturbed about how are we going to distribute what is left behind. The next document I want us to look at is the Revocable Trust. And we don't hear about this often, but this is a document that can be prepared in addition to the will. Now, a will leaves assets, or I should say, a will, the assets in a will are distributed after the testator passes. A revocable trust, on the other hand, can be filled with assets that can be distributed at any time in the process, even before the passing. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's a parent has a minor child and wants to leave a gift for the child. The parent can go to the bank and create an account in trust for the child, so that whatever in the account can go to the child. The parent can say, in trust for the child when the child becomes 21, or when the child becomes 30, or when the child finishes college, or whatever is the requirement that will please that parent. And so that's one way that a trust can be created. And it's revocable because it's possible that you can change it at any point. You have the ability to change that trust. There are various types of trust, but I just want to point out to you that it's possible that you can create that trust. What that trust does is it keeps certain things out of the will. So rather than having to wait for the will to be probated by the court, when a relative passes, if money is left in trust for a specific person, that person can go directly to the bank or whoever is the holder of the trust and claim that those funds, maybe those funds can even be used for the burial of the deceased. And so whatever is in the trust is kept out of the will, and therefore there's not a need to wait for the probating of a will. The next document we're going to look at is what is called a letter of instruction. And this can also be called an addendum or a supplement to the will. And in this document, you are leaving instructions for the executor. So you're letting the executor know who your attorney is, who your accountant is, financial advisor, maybe who your pastor is, who is the pastor that you want to perform the service as you are celebrated or as you are buried. And you can leave that either the same place you leave the will, or you can leave it in a place where you know it will be found, in a Bible, in a safety deposit box, someplace where it can be found. That's called a letter of instruction. And as I said, it can simply be an addendum to the will. The fourth document is the durable financial power of attorney. And we know that wealthy people have these. And we think it's only for wealthy people, billionaires and millionaires. But those of us who have a little less than that, we can save our families a lot of problems here again if we have a durable power of attorney. Without this form, no one can make financial decisions on your behalf. And this form covers you even when you're incapacitated. Let's look at an example. So let's say you have a large sum of money in the bank, and you don't have a durable power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and then you pass away. The bank will not release those funds to anyone until there's a court hearing and a court decision is made. However, if you have a power of attorney, financial power of attorney, that person can speak on your behalf, can approach the bank. The bank will know who that person is because you would have informed them of that person's right. And if you notice, it also says that it covers you even when incapacitated, meaning that if you develop Alzheimer's or in some form of dementia, you are unable to make decisions for yourself, that power of attorney will be sufficient to cover whoever is holding it so that they are able to make financial decisions on your behalf. It releases undue stress from your family members. Very important document. Oh, moving right along, and we are going to now look at number 5, and that is a list of all bank accounts and all online login. Used to be long ago, we had one bank account. Now we have several bank accounts for various reasons. We need to keep an accounting of that information. All our bank accounts. Now we log into our bank accounts from our computers and sometimes from several computers. And so we need to have a list of that information. All our bank accounts listed in a safe place, all the login information about how to get into your various online accounts where you shop and where you do business, even the social media accounts. This information needs to be in a safe place where it can be accessed. And number 6, a list of any safety deposit boxes that you may own. You should register, this should be registered. You should include your children and your spouse in that information. You should make them signatories so that they can have access if you are deceased. And also they should know where to find the keys, where to access the keys for the safety deposit boxes that you own. And on to the 7th form. We talked earlier about the durable financial power of attorney. Now we're talking about the durable healthcare power of attorney. Designate someone to make healthcare decisions if you're incapacitated. We know this is almost a no-brainer, but yet there are many people who have not done that as yet. Do not wait until you get sick. We just don't know what level of sickness will come upon you and whether you're going to be able to even speak. So designate someone, make a record of it, place it in some place where it's accessible, and don't make this the error of not having this information. Most states have a standard form that can be used. Also, hospitals have these forms. So go ahead and download the form from your state office website, the Department of State for your particular state, and complete that form, have it signed, notarized, whatever is required, and keep it on record where it can be found. And that's your durable healthcare power of attorney. Form 8 is designate someone to share healthcare decisions if you're incapacitated. So you should have someone designated to share that information. We, as a family, we had a severe loss in our family. We lost our mom a few years ago, and we were faced with having to make serious decisions for her, and it challenged us in a lot of ways. And so I hope that you will not have to face some of what we had to face in terms of having to make decisions to someone, not knowing what they would desire because we don't have the appropriate documents completed. Make sure you provide contact information for your insurance company, important medical personnel. You should know, make a record of who your doctor is, who, specialists in the various fields for your health care. And this can be done together with the power of attorney. Complete this document, keep it on record. And then the 9th document is a living will. And we refer to this often like as a DNR. But a living will is a way of letting our families know what decisions we want to make if we encounter a serious illness. Do we want to be resuscitated? Do we want to die out, experience a natural death? Do you want palliative care? What about if you were placed on life support? These are what we call end-of-life decisions. We have the opportunity now to make these decisions, especially if we have young children. It helps to relieve a lot of the stress if they know that the decisions they're making on behalf of their parents are the wishes of their parents or the wishes of your spouse and or your child. And so I encourage you to proceed. Put away the fear and the anxieties and think that when we prepare for anything, including death, it relieves those of our relatives and friends who have to play such an important part in placing us to rest. It relieves them of the stress of, and so I encourage you to prepare these documents, have them ready. God gives us wisdom to make plans. And he says in Proverbs 16:3 that when we make plans, he approves the plans. And there are times when he may disapprove of our plans, but one thing is sure is that when we do not make a plan, there can be no decision. We wouldn't know what he approves us of, and we wouldn't know what he disapproves of if we do not make plans. And as one of the speakers said earlier, where there is no plan, where there is no vision, people perish, people become overwhelmed, people are not able to cope. So I encourage you to make plans for your future and allow God to bless those plans. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grace. This is such valuable information. And I know you're receiving a lot from being here. A lot of information that you would have to be paying significant amount of money to get. Make those 10 documents a part of your file. Start on them today, especially in the midst of diabetes and COVID. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. So prepare for your future. Okay, I see a couple of hands that are up. So blessed. We're going to start with you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, I'm not hearing a response. Are you there? All right, so we'll move along and go to Dr. Brathwaite. Dr. Brathwaite has joined us to share with us some information on our response to the COVID vaccine. Oh, the Seventh-day Adventist response to the COVID vaccine, especially again in the context of diabetes and other conditions that we may face. Dr. Brathwaite, are you ready to present?
Yes, I'm ready.
There you go. Okay.
I'm going to have more of a discussion than a formal presentation. So here we go. Good evening, everyone. The subject is, what is the Adventist attitude in response to COVID-19? This presentation is informed by the guidance presented by the General Conference, is informed by what we know about the attitude of the Adventist healthcare system towards COVID and vaccine. It is also informed by some discussions with some healthcare providers, Adventist healthcare providers, and is also informed by discussions with church members and a survey that was sent out from the North American Division to selected churches and conferences. And so that's the basis on which I can form a conclusion. And my opening statement is simply this: what we are witnessing today regarding Adventist attitude toward COVID, what we're witnessing today are echoes of the smallpox era. So one can go back to the Adventist attitude towards the smallpox and contrast that with the Adventist attitude towards the COVID-19. So if we establish that there are echoes of the smallpox, this is going to bring us into the discussion relative to E.G. White's position during the smallpox pandemic. And then we can advance and say, well, so what about COVID-19? It's interesting to note that regarding COVID-19, some Adventists have come up with the idea that one can embed in the vaccine something that will change the DNA. That's one idea that has been floated among Adventists, but not just Adventists, but also non-Adventists, but that something can be embedded in the vaccine that would change the DNA. So there's a hesitancy to get the vaccine, to inject the vaccine. And the other one is that it is receiving the mark of the beast. Those are two ideas that have been commented on by the Adventist Review. What about the back to the era of the smallpox, which laid the foundation for the Adventist position relative to COVID-19? Back in the day, E.G. White, she called the question of the vaccine in the context of COVID, of smallpox, perplexing. And we can say today, in the era of COVID, that the question of vaccines is also perplexing. In answer to the question about early Adventists and their thought on medicine, she didn't have, that is, E.G. White didn't have clear divine revelations on vaccines, but she had in terms of the whole concept of health, whole health, healthy lifestyle, and so on. And as she was watching the discussion, and the people were kind of negative about it for a while. Adventists, and some Adventists were negative about smallpox. But later, as the vaccine had less complications, because in initial stages of the smallpox, there were complications. And so there was more safety connected with the vaccine then. And so other staff members thought it would be a good idea, staff members of E.G. White thought it was a good idea to get a vaccine for smallpox. And so they did. And E.G. White supported that position. Fast forward today, and based on that experience, E.G. White says we are expected to do the best we can, relative to the vaccine. And that best we can, in other course, have a responsible vaccination. The General Conference has taken a position as far as the COVID vaccine is concerned. And so there's a term that I will use, and no doubt some of you would be familiar with it. It's called responsible vaccination. And if you look at what has prolonged life, life has been prolonged on the basis of healthful living. And that's the context in which we examine the vaccine, as it was back in the day of the smallpox. What would help prolong life? What would give healthful living? We have sanitation issues that we support. Clean water we support. And not only in terms of healthful living, but when we put longevity into the midst of these things, the question is further highlighted that we should encourage things that prolong life and also give healthful living. So you have that which prolongs life, longevity, and that which gives you quality of life in such things as clean water, sanitation, diet, exercise, the whole New Start idea. Prolonging life and also giving quality of life. And so one of the things that contribute in an epidemic to the prolongation of life is responsible immunization. And so the Adventist attitude in terms of its leadership is that they encourage immunization, but at the same time, it says it's very much an individual choice. The church has established guidelines in support of vaccination, taking into consideration the experience of smallpox. But at the same time, it says the church is not the conscience of the church member. So the attitude of the church leadership in terms of statements and guidance, counsel from the General Conference and from the North American Division is in support of vaccination. And in the context of quality of life and in the context of elongation of life, that is life expectancy. And so one of the conclusions that we can reach about the conditions within the smallpox arena is that E.G. White herself was vaccinated against smallpox. She was vaccinated and urged her helpers, her staff, those who are connected to her, to be vaccinated. In taking this step, E.G. White recognized the fact that it has been proven that vaccination either renders one immune from smallpox or greatly lightens its effect if one does come down with smallpox. She also recognized the danger of their exposing others if they fail to take this precaution. And that's in Selected Messages, book 2, page 303. So as a church, we place strong emphasis on health. We place strong emphasis on well-being. The Adventist health emphasis is based on biblical revelation the inspired writing of Ellen White on peer-reviewed scientific literature. As such, the church is saying, we encourage responsible immunization, vaccination, and have no religious or faith-based reason not to encourage our adherents to responsibly participate in protective and preventive immunization programs. We value the health and safety of the population, which includes the maintenance of herd immunity. However, it says, we are not the conscience of the individual church member and recognize individual choices. These are exercised by the individual. The choice not to be immunized is not and should not be seen as a dogma, not a doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So that is the position of the leadership of the Adventist Church. General Conference of American Division, Allegheny East Conference, and even up further north, the Northeastern Conference. Interestingly, however, there's a dilemma that is faced by the pastors. And this caused some concern in that some members, and we're dealing with perspective of Adventist and attitude, some members have been asking pastors for letters to exempt them from taking the vaccine. Some members have been asking pastors. And the North American Division and the Allegheny East Conference and the Northeastern Conference sent out letters to the pastors, prohibiting pastors from granting letters under the name of the church for religious exemption from the vaccine program, which is supported by General Conference. So individual members, the conscience of individual members has to be preserved. But at the same time, the practice of pastors has to be protected in the interest of the church. And so pastors are not allowed, based on the information from the conference and from the leadership, to give individual church members letters under the guise of religious exemption. Some, on the other hand, there's another caveat in it, which is relative to pre-existing conditions and medical exceptions. I have been approached by some members and asking to identify Adventist providers, healthcare providers, so that these healthcare providers can give them a letter indicating that this is not the time for them to take the vaccine because of medical conditions. There are some providers that are what we consider to be anti-vaccine, anti-vaxxers, or they themselves prefer not to take the vaccine. And so some individuals are seeking some Adventist providers for them to get letters indicating that they're not able to take the vaccine at this time. So that is sort of a dilemma to put the pastors in the position of issuing letters, and then the healthcare providers with their individual consciences, not employees of the healthcare system, the Adventist healthcare system, but individual providers of having to write letters. That's what we are witnessing today, as was evident in, let's say, 1905 in E.G. White's time. Recently, some of you might have received it. Some of you might have received a survey. Recently, a survey, and I got a copy of the survey asking to fill it out. And some from the North American Division, from selected conferences and unions and selected churches within the conferences and unions. So members, individual members can now complete the survey. It is entitled Adventist Perspectives on COVID-19. I don't know how many of you in the audience have received a copy of that survey, but I receive and I fill it out. And some of the questions are interesting. One question is, and for those who have not yet received it, but this is of interest since we are discussing the Adventist attitude towards COVID-19, and which are echoes of what happened during the smallpox era and the guidance of the church through the General Conference and the division and the conferences. So to the individual church member now, he says, he asked the question, does I say I have 5 more minutes? Good.
3 more minutes.
3 more? Okay. Well, if you have questions, then I could wrap it up in 1 minute. It asks the question, have you already received a vaccine? So this is the first, let's say, study or quantitative study relative to the Adventist attitude. There were observations and there were comments and so on, discussions, but this is it's supposed to be a quantitative study which should be giving us some data towards the end of the year. So one question is, have you already received a vaccine for COVID-19? What is the main reason you have not received the vaccine? If you have not received it, how likely are you to get the vaccine sometime in the future? How likely would you be to get the vaccine if you understood more about its safety and side effects? How likely are you to get the vaccine if your doctor recommends it? And how likely are you to get the vaccine if a family member urges you to do so? And if you have received a vaccine for COVID-19, did you experience any side effects? And then they ask you about your opinion about mask wearing or your practice of mask wearing, social physical distancing, and also how useful are vaccines in preventing the spread of COVID-19. It is hoped that by the end of the year, or even earlier, the results of that survey, I think could be considered to be the first survey. I'm sure what is being studied by Loma Linda relative to vaccine attitude or by any of the other universities about vaccine attitude, but we are certainly in the since I'm director of the Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities at the Maryland Department of Health, we ourselves will be conducting some studies about the attitude of minorities who are resistant towards and trying to find some answers. I hope, therefore, that this presentation about the attitude of Adventists, which is a very, some are resistant to COVID-19 vaccine, others are complying and taking it. So it's a mixed bag of attitude, and some are going so far as placing it in the context of the end of times and prophecy, and also in terms of putting something in it that would change your DNA. So and you can acquire immunity by going on certain diets and expose yourself to sunlight and so on. So there are a number of theories out there among Adventists, but the critical thing is, from my perspective, based on what the General Conference is, the guidelines and counsel of the General Conference, and the echoes of smallpox into the COVID-19, that I would encourage in the context of our health ministry, and in the context of our healthful living, in the context of longevity, I would encourage listeners to take the vaccine and at the same time live healthy, follow the laws of health, and develop good, healthy relationships. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bradford. That was so informative, and I hope that each of us takes away what is relevant to our individual situations. And in the context, again, of diabetes and having to be vaccinated and having to deal with our underlying conditions, that we will be more informed to make decisions that will keep us healthy and keep our lives increase our longevity on this earth. Now, I want to like lighten things up a little bit, because we've been talking a lot about diabetes, and diabetes comes with a lot of responsibilities and sickness and for problems with your feet and problems with your nails. And, you know, it can be somewhat depressing. And as I'm saying this, is there any other presenter online on this platform that hasn't gone yet? Please send me a message in the chat. So I want to lighten it up a little bit and talk about quality of life in terms of self-care. You know, we can get to the point where, you know, we're so busy trying to take care of our health that we forget to take care of ourselves. And so in the context of self-care, I want to focus on how you take care of your skin and the skin on your face, because a lot of us just believe that going into the shower and just washing our face with soap and water is enough. And perhaps it's enough, but are we really stopping to take care of ourselves, to take care of the skin that we're in? Do you know that you have over 1,000 species of bacteria that live on your skin, and the things in your environment, 80% of the aging that takes place on your skin is as a result of environmental factors? So where is your quality of life? How can taking care of your skin increase your quality of life or improve your quality of life? And that's one of the things I want to share with you tonight. So you can have a skincare regimen, and I'm going to demonstrate a skincare regimen that you can use. And this skincare regimen can be done in the mornings and in the evening. You decide what products you want to use, but spend some time giving yourself self-love, you know, taking care of your skin, ensuring that your skin is protected, it's moisturized, and it's kept alive and young and fresh for as long as possible. Clean your skin on a daily basis. Clean it with some kind of cleanser that would take out your dead skin, that would take away the bacteria and the dirt that you accumulate from your environment and give you that fresh, younger looking skin. Spend some time on yourself. How many of us today really just took 10 minutes to spend some time on ourselves? Even if we're not into makeup and foundation and all that stuff that people may add, how much time do you spend to make sure that your skin looks better? And what does that have to do with quality of life? If you look better, you're going to feel better. So a lot of times we get bogged down as we are taking care of our diabetes, or we are taking care of whatever condition we might be suffering. And all that's in our focus is the negative aspects of the disease. But I want you to consider tonight that you can have some me time. You know, it might be taking care of your face. It might be soaking in a tub. It might be going to a spa. It might be going to get a massage. But when you do these leisure activities, they would add to how you feel about yourself. And when you feel positive about yourself, then you will definitely have a better quality of life. You know, a big part of life has to do with mindset. And a big part of mindset has to do also with the way you look. So cleanse your skin in the morning and in the evening. Look, just from that one cleansing, my skin has brightened up. I can see the glow in my face, and it does make me feel lifted. It does make me feel more make me feel happy about myself, and gives me an opportunity to caress my skin and to like the person that I am. So find some time in your day. It won't take you long. Find some time in your day, in the morning and in the evening, to take care of the skin that God has given you. Rejuvenate yourself and improve your quality of life. All right, so that was a quick fix, a quick demonstration, and a quick opportunity to help you to improve your quality of life. All right, last call. Do we have any other presenters who are online that needs to present before we close the curtain, pull the curtains down tonight? Oh yes, Dr. Branswell is here with us as well, our final presenter for tonight. Dr. Branswell is going to speak to us, and we really, really want to hear from him because he has such important information to share with us tonight. Welcome to the forum. Welcome to this platform, and the stage is yours. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Pardon me for laughing. That what you just did as a sort of a little bit of a break there in the serious discussions was quite helpful. What was the name of that the conditioner you used there? I want to jot that down.
Oh, this is the TimeWise Miracle Set 3D.
TimeWise Miracle Set. Okay.
Yes.
Keep
TimeWise Miracle Set.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry, I may have gotten your name wrong. Ma'am, I appreciate all of you, and I've really enjoyed the day from early on to right now, so I really appreciate it. And I hope that what I present here, and I'll try to be cognizant of the time here, not take too long, will be helpful, at least in some food for thought about ways that might help a country like Guyana, which maybe doesn't have the same resources as a lot of other countries. But it's also hopefully applicable to people who need mental health care any place. There's an article that was written in the Guyana Chronicle, May 30th, 2020. And the author said, among other things, despite an increase in mental health services there in Guyana, quote, we are still under-equipped to adequately manage the number of cases we actually have in Guyana if everyone affected were to seek help. So something very important there is that, first of all, he's suggesting that people there often don't seek help, and that's not surprising. That's the case with no help anywhere. And also that they would be under-equipped. And that's probably just about everywhere too. I don't think there's any place in the world that has enough mental health providers, even a place like Switzerland, which has an enormous number, that maybe could help everyone who actually might seek help. That says something about the number of people that suffer with mental illness and that don't seek help for various reasons. And part of what I would suggest here is that in this talk about psychiatry and this identity crisis, and some thoughts about that, is that this crisis brings an opportunity for us to do some work that's still in really its infancy of treatment, infancy of being used, that actually might help folks who would otherwise not come out for mental health care. So that I hope will be interesting to you. A text I'd like to read as we consider helping others, and that's what I'm certainly understanding GuyMetro to do, is found in Matthew chapter 25, verse 31 through just 34. And it says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd separates his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And obviously, you know that the Lord says the converse of those who, the goats who did not come and minister to him. So let me share just a few thoughts. Again, I'll try to be cognizant of the time here. The scope of the problem of mental health, that's pretty obvious. We know that's an extraordinary problem around the world. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, and it refers to in 2017 that 10.7% of the global population lived under a mental health disorder. That's 792 million people in the world. If you add to that substance abuse, that would be 970 million. Yet this is not something that we think about a lot. It's sort of a hidden disease in a lot of ways and still a lot of stigma. By contrast, and these folks certainly need the help, as we know these days, but according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, there are about 87 or 82.4 million refugees, people and internally displaced people and so forth. So you see this, I mean, as much as those folks need help, and I'm here at McGuire Air Force Base this evening, where a lot of refugees or evacuees are taken. As important as that issue is, and I'm glad it's being highlighted, you have this magnifold, this multitude of difference for people who suffer chronically that the world just doesn't look at very carefully. The state of psychiatry in regard to its identity has been talked about quite a bit. One set of authors in 1979 said, psychiatry has several partial identities reflecting partial identities, so not full identity, but partial identities reflecting its biologic, psychoanalytic, and social subspecialties. And one of the suggestions that they make is that there needs to be a use of psychology or psychiatric knowledge, use of knowledge outside of psychiatry. And that's something that's an identity issue for psychiatrists because we are used to prescribing medications. Yet, if you work in a psychiatry clinic for any period of time, you know that there are a lot of resources outside the psychiatry department that we utilize. And I would dare say that, and I tell my patients this, there are resources that are well outside, I work at the VA, well outside the VA, done by other patients and former patients that can do an enormous amount of good without anything that we offer in the building. And so that's really important for us to consider. In 2015, a psychiatrist by the name of Richard Friedman, who is an author for the New York Times opinion pieces, said that American psychiatry is facing a quandary. Despite a vast investment in basic neuroscience research and its rich intellectual promise, we have little to show for it on the treatment front. So, for example, these days, we think it's well known that psychiatric medications have been around for about 70 years or so. And we're not really much further than we were from the start. We're actually using the same types of compounds. The difference is that the newer ones cause less side effects. And so we use the newer ones a lot more than the old ones like Thorazine and Haldol, particularly. But the fact of the matter is there's not really much new technology. So there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of great basic science and technology, but that really isn't translated into better care for patients, except that we have fewer side effects. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at kind of where we are in psychiatry in terms of effectiveness in treatment. So, he concludes, Dr. Friedman, that there needs to be more research into psychotherapy, and that's certainly true. The NIH sends lots of money for research into basic science, very little into psychotherapy, even though it's clear that psychotherapy is very effective for lots of conditions, even the serious mental health illnesses, issues that we usually treat with medication. So let me share some thoughts here. With psychiatry, you have, just like any area of medicine, you have different kinds of aspects of it. And neuroscience is one, medication, psychotherapy. Those are the traditional ones that we use in clinic. But there's some other things too that need to be seriously considered. If you go to a psychiatrist yourself or take a loved one, but also on a broader scale, like a country or a group of people that have less resources. For example, if Guyana fits into that category, some of the things I looked at involve work that was done in India and sub-Saharan Africa, but also refugees, for example, or people within a different country that are in a different group that doesn't have the same resources. So let me just mention two important factors here. One was for non-traditional treatments. And that's say for, here in the United States, where we use, again, standard psychiatry, standard mental health care, usually within the four walls of the clinic. And then also, though, looking at low resource populations, and the essential issue here is task shifting. The idea of task shifting has been around for a long time, but it's as good as it is, it still hasn't gotten a real good foothold in a lot of places. And it's still something that's probably underutilized. And I would suggest that depending on how much GuyMetro does in terms of mental health treatment, that would be something to look at. Would task shifting be an important issue to consider? Maybe some of you are very familiar with it, but for those who aren't, let me just share a little bit about that. First of all, in terms of the shorter issue here, non-traditional treatments, I recommend if you go to see a psychiatrist, realize that the psychiatrist has been trained in mostly medication management, some training in psychotherapy, and is familiar with the basic neurosciences. But the insurance industry and frankly the pharmacological industry have really driven psychiatrists into a narrow kind of pathway here of providing medication. What I've learned since I've been working at the VA is this. I'll use PTSD as an example. There are excellent therapies that are very low tech and that are done by people outside the VA. So for example, veterans have told me how well they've done with things like Outward Bound, dog sledding in Minnesota. I've spoken to the person who's in charge of what's called warrior expeditions. There are various things that people can do, and this is just using PTSD as an example, that go well beyond what we do in medicine. And it actually involves the healing that comes from being in nature, having a cohort of people that you're working with, that just goes beyond what we can do in general psychiatry. So, and of course, New Start and other lifestyle things are important. So, if you go to a psychiatrist, or if you are taking a family member or a loved one, realize that the psychiatrist might not be aware of these kind of things, and you should go in aware of the fact that there's probably something else. As good as a psychiatrist might be, and as much as they want to take care of you, they may not realize that these other options are available. They may not recommend them because they don't have good evidence base. And the important thing to realize is that there are lots of good things out there where there's not a good evidence base because no one's going to pay for them to be researched on them. You don't have a good evidence base if you have money to pay for a good research. And so just realize that that's important. The one caveat would be that there are some things that work very well for mental illness that we really can't recommend because of the spiritual implications. That's something to consider as well. What kind of spiritual implication would this have? Does it agree or not agree with what the scripture says? And so there are some things that help people. I'm not an expert in yoga at all, but as an example, my understanding is that from some recent information that I came across, that you can, with PTSD, with about 3 months, I think they did this out in California, one of the universities out there, 3 months of intensive training in yoga and breathing techniques can actually result in resolution of PTSD symptoms. And a year following out, the person still has resolved symptoms. That's pretty powerful. But I can't say I'd recommend that. So we have to realize that some of the things that are not traditional are not necessarily good. And they may be very effective health-wise, but not very effective at all, very helpful in terms of your spiritual life and even your salvation. So those things that are outside the box have sometimes have some warnings to carry with them. So just some thoughts about what you might want to do if you go see a psychiatrist. But now to the issue of task shifting, that's really important because the issue here is that throughout the world, most people don't have access to good mental health care. There aren't enough psychiatrists and psychologists and trained social workers, clinical social workers to go around. And for example, in Zimbabwe, there was some research by Dr. Dixon Chibanda. And in Zimbabwe, at least the time that this was written, there were 10 psychiatrists for 13 million people. And in some cases, I think there's even less though for that number of people. And so Dr. Chibanda did an experiment, and this is written up in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and it's called the Effective Primary Care-Based Psychological Intervention on Symptoms of Common Mental Disorders in Zimbabwe, randomized clinical trial. And so what essentially he did was he said this: there are only 10 psychiatrists or 13 million people. There's just not enough help there. And so what he looked at was depression and anxiety, as well as other mental illnesses, but especially focusing on depression. And what they did was they shift the task of providing mental health professionals to laypersons. They call them lay health workers. And so that they might bridge the treatment gap. And so what happened is they set up a nice little experiment here. Took 573 randomized patients, randomized into two groups. And this is actually conducted in 2014 with a follow-up 6 months later. So one group was called the Friendship Bench. This is a Friendship Bench, and as I understand, there are actually a lot of grandmoms in this group who were actually became the psychotherapists. They did 6 sessions, and there was an additional option for 6 sessions later with for peer support. And they did something called individual problem-solving therapy. So these therapists were trained and supervised by the more skilled or more trained psychotherapists. There was also a control group that got standard care and information about health and so forth. And interestingly, 86% of the patients there, because of course patients were self-selected. Once they're in the group, 86% of the patients were women, and average age was 33, and 41% were HIV positive. So that may just tell us something about the folks in the situations where they may have more of a desire to go and get mental health. And after 6 months, 90% followed up. So this was a good follow-up number. And they found that the intervention group had fewer common mental health disorders than the control group. And they also had a lower risk for depression symptoms as well. Now, these are from folks who were not previously trained. They did get good training in this particular type of psychotherapy. And the training was monitored, they're monitored, and the sessions were actually audio taped so that they can be discussed. And so they had quite a significant amount of improvement from these lay health workers. This provide care for, this is experiment there, but potentially this can provide care for folks who would not otherwise have any mental health care at all. Remember, we're talking about hundreds of millions of folks in the world who have depression, and many of them in countries that, unlike the United States, just don't have the resources that we have. Harvard professor Vikram Patel has similar interests and has done writing similarly, and he just mentioned 3 cases or 3 types of, 3 locations of therapy, again, in under resourced places. One was in Uganda, one was in Pakistan, and one was in his home village of Goa, India. And essentially, you had the same kind of thing where in Uganda, they used interpersonal psychotherapy. And in this work, they found that 95% of those who were actually in the treatment group got substantially better compared to 40% in the control group. In Uganda, they taught people who were referred to as ladies' health workers. So these people would go in and help women with women's health issues, as well as, I guess I think they served as midwives as well. And they taught them a cognitive behavioral therapy for moms, specifically. And their numbers are quite good. That 73% of those who had this cognitive behavioral therapy, which by the way is really complex. People spend years learning cognitive behavioral therapy. 73% of those who did that kind of cognitive behavioral therapy did well compared to 41% of the control group. And finally, in Dr. Patel's hometown or home village of Goa, India, it was a 70-50 comparison. So 70% of the people got better with actual therapy through the lay health workers and 50% with the control group. The importance of this is that, and you can tell me whether or not this is something that would be within the scope of something that GuyMetro might potentially do, or if it would be of some interest in Guyana in general. Maybe this is being done already. But again, the problem with depression and anxiety in particular is so enormous around the world that's just beyond any professional group of people to handle. You get a lot of education in med school and psychology programs and so forth, but there's just not enough of those of us who do that to go around. And so the real take-home message here is that if we utilize the resources that people outside of psychiatry and psychology and so forth can provide, and if we train people to be lay health workers, specifically in terms of mental health, this can have, if this goes further, this can have a vast impact that you just won't have without it. In other words, the world simply doesn't have enough people who go to school to be psychiatrists and psychologists. And I think the only way to actually make a great impact in terms of mental health will be for people to be enlisted and this task shifting to get that mental health care to them. So that is essentially what I wanted to say, and I hope that this has been at least informative, and I think it's potentially applicable if the desire and efforts there and the resources there to train people.
This is very helpful and informative, Dr. Bradswell. We really need to consider the mental health aspect of so many of our people in Guyana, even within the context of diabetes and dental diseases. And we are going to be calling on you to help support us as we venture into this new area where there's such a high and significant need among our people. Suicide rates are very, very high in Guyana. And so, bringing this topic to our attention is so important. And we appreciate you being a part of our forum. And we thank you so much for your contributions.
It's my privilege. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a pack-filled day. And now it's time for us to leave, say goodbye. But I want to give Terrence an opportunity to beg of you, to ask of you to go ahead and contribute to this worthy cause that GuyMetro has been involved in, this mission of reaching our people and providing healthcare opportunities so that they can have the quality of life that they deserve and have longevity.
Thank you, Yanita. And I'd ask Dr. Noel Brathwaite to join me with this aspect of the program.
Okay.
I've always listened to him. Dr. Brathwaite, in case we did not properly introduce you, he is representing the state of Maryland and focused on minority health. And he sometimes give a lot of tips to us as to how we can, as an organization, not non-for-profit organization, get funds. Before I allow him to share some of the ways in which we can handle that, I just wanted to make reference to what Dr. Grace Semper Paul had to say about leaving will. And I was always captioned by the address that is made by the president of Washington Adventist University at graduation time. And I can see here I have about 24 people who is visible on the participant list, or there might be families that makes the number greater. But I want to say that GuyMetro will need any donation that you can make available. I have put on the chat ways in which you can donate. And then the president of Washington Adventist University always tell the graduates, before you die, give something to the college. I'm saying to you, before you die, give something to GuyMetro. Okay, Dr. Brathwaite, you can begin to talk as I leave that thought with them.
Well, I'll give my donation of $100 right now, and I think that's not a death wish, but I want to live long and enjoy the quality of life. But I really want to make a contribution, and I think that when we look at the value of our investment, we look at this as an investment. It's not just a gift. It is an investment, and we want a return. We want a return on the investment, right, Terrence? We want a return on investment, and that return could be in developing the skills and competencies of individuals who are studying in certain disciplines of need in Guyana, and also doing some mentoring here in the US. So I think it's very important for us to invest not only in the present, but also invest in the future and support skill building, support development. So I'll make my contribution. How can an organization like GuyMetro that has a history of doing things and history of support? How can it continue and expand through giving and through attracting funding? I think as a 501c3 organization, and I hope that you continue to do that. One of the first things that I would encourage you to do is to register if you're interested in public funds. If you're interested in public funds, register with the state of Maryland so that they can have a record that you are doing business. You have to register with the state, and the registering with the state give you access to the electronic market so that they would inform you of all of the opportunities for small business and all of the opportunities for department-wide business with the state, but you have to register. So the question is, are you registered with the state? Are you also, it could be possible for across borders, for example, in DC, you might be able to register with, but that's one of the critical things. Registration is very important, and having registered, you have a business plan. What is your business plan? What are the top 3 areas of business? Just like you have product, what are your top product lines? I think Yonet introduced a product line just now in terms of skincare. So what are your top 3 product lines that you can advertise as your top prioritized areas? And then you go after grants that are focusing on those prioritized areas. Your product, these are your products. You can develop skills and competencies within those product lines, and then you can write grants and attract business. But I think those are top 3 strategies that must be used. Of course, the basic thing is that they are consistent with your strategic plan. That is, you have a strategic plan, and because that's one of the things that they're going to look for. Are these product lines consistent with your strategic plan, your 2 or 3 or 5-year strategic plan, with your top product lines? And then giving, I think, would be consistent with your strategic plan and your product line, your expertise. And I would guarantee you that within the next 2 years or so, with that kind of strategy, registering with the state, developing your 3-5-year plan, focusing on certain critical product lines, developing your expertise within those product lines, the funding would come. And I think that within the next 3 years following that, you could be a $1 million small business. So I look forward to, if you want my particular guidance, but there has to be some connection between a desire to do it and actually doing it, so that this organization, GuyMetro, could become a leading organization within the state of Maryland, contributing to development of GuyMetro, not only in Maryland, but also in Guyana. So I wish you well. I've made my contribution, personal contribution, and I will be ready to assist in strategizing for the future and growing the organization to become a leading 501c3 in Maryland.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bradford, and we are certainly going to call on you. We are very much interested in what you shared tonight, and we're going to call on your expertise to move the organization forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Terrence, can you go ahead and close this off, give the vote of thanks, and close this off for tonight?
Express my appreciation for the entire weekend. I have been looking at comments, and people have been texting privately and on the chat saying how well a program it was. The program worth more than $40. So you can give any amount you want. When we open the door so that you can give any amount you want to this organization and for the cause that it is. You know, I am very appreciative of Dr. Robert Braswell, I just met recently while in Michigan at Andrews University. And he has had friends of Guyanese friends, including a very good name, Kwame, or maiden name was DeYoung. I don't know what is her new name. But so he was excited to talk to me. And in fact, Janet, we've got to engage him in a Guyana trip.
Most certainly.
But I'm very happy to see that he has company. In fact, he was going to New Jersey to visit families and is communicating with us from wherever he is, because this Zoom has given us an opportunity to connect with everybody. And I am happy for this work we've done here. And I must say thanks to all who participated and all who came on board. And I want you guys to give great encouragement to this current president that has a lot of energy, but a lot of responsibilities. She's engaged in a lot of things, but she's a think tank. That's how I put it over. And I think GuyMetro will continue to maintain a good relationship with Guyana and the public here in Maryland. And I want to thank all of you. And I know that we have some new faces. As you notice, we have drafted for the first time more young people in our program. That's an idea we want to see how we can appeal to our youths to get involved in the country of their parents' birth. Mm-hmm. And like Dr. Roy Cornelius in his emphasis made that clear, that you got to take your child back to the country that you're from. Janet, so you have a task to work on that. I mean, a few years ago, I decided I'm going to take my children back to Guyana. They were excited by the fruit, but they didn't like the mosquitoes, they claimed. But I was able to get them down to Guyana, and I believe that I can take them again. So I want to thank you all for this meeting. This is a great weekend, and GuyMetro is here to stay. And GuyMetro is here to solicit your help, and will continue to solicit your support. Join us and get involved in our registry. If nothing else, the final thought I want to say, get involved in our registry so we can pull all those resources that is available to this organization. I thank you.
Let us pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this glorious day. So many things that we have learned from interacting and collaborating today. And we pray for the strength and the ability and the motivation to put into effect the things that we have considered and have internalized and have learned. And may we, in our dedication, seek to serve others, for it's by doing so that we serve you. Bless each one of us on this platform, and bless the Guyanese community in the metro area, in Guyana, and in the world at large. And may your coming be soon, and your people be ready when you burst those clouds of heaven and take us home to live with you forever and ever. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.